You've waited long enough. The outer world has echoed your longing, mirrored your hesitation, and replayed the music of delay like a lullaby meant to keep you asleep. But the silence between the notes is stirring. Something within you, ancient and unshaken, is beginning to remember. You have prayed for a sign. You have searched the sky, traced patterns in the stars, looked for hidden doors in the mundane, hoping that something, anything outside of you might tell you it is time. But there is a reason no sign ever satisfies for long. The sign was never meant to come first. You are the sign. You are the appointed moment. You are the operant power. Most wait for the wind to blow in their favor, not realizing they are the breath. They wait for the doors to open, not knowing they are the key. They wait for permission, while heaven itself waits on their assumption. You do not attract what you want. You reflect what you are conscious of being. This is not a motivational notion. It is the law. And as this truth settles in, like dawn spreading softly over the edge of sleep, something begins to shift, a holy unease, a gentle unraveling of every excuse you've carried. For if you are the operant power, then nothing stands between you and the fulfilled state, but your own remembrance of it. The delay is not out there. It is not in the heavens nor in the hands of fate. The delay is only in the refusal to accept that imagining creates reality. The world is a mirror, fixed in expression until you move in consciousness. It is not responsive to effort, but to identity. When you live from the state of your desire already fulfilled, you bend the reflection without touching the glass. You do not wait for proof. You become the proof. Like light that does not seek the shadow's permission to shine, your assumption does not require the world's agreement to be true. This is what most never realize. Imagination is not wishful. It is causal. It is not fantasy. It is the sacred substance of all that appears. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word is still speaking, through you as you. In every silent assumption you allow to be so, you have placed imagination on a pedestal, far above you, as if it were a tool to be reached for. But imagination is not separate from you. It is you. You are the dreamer, and the dream, and the dreaming. Notice what shifts in you as you hear this, not as an idea, but as an inner recognition, the warmth of a memory long buried, not newly learned. For you have done this before. Every fulfilled longing in your life began as an imaginal act, a moment of unseen decision, where you dared to assume it already yours, and the world conformed. Not immediately perhaps, not all at once, but inevitably, as day follows night, the shadow moved to reflect the light within. But here is what stops most seekers. They imagine and then wait. They visualize and then scan the world for signs. This waiting is not faith. It is fear disguised as patience. True faith is rest. It is knowing that once you have assumed, the harvest is guaranteed. You do not dig up the seed each morning to see if it has sprouted. You trust the soil of consciousness, and you live as though it is done. Feel the weight of that. Feel how much of your life has been spent in suspense, in the purgatory of almost, not because the law failed, but because the assumption was never fully occupied. You entertained the wish, but lived in the doubt. You flirted with the end, but married the lack. And the world, being only echo, gave you precisely what you confirmed with your state. But what if you stopped waiting altogether? What if you abandoned the need for signs, and became the embodiment of the answered prayer? What if you stepped into the imaginal scene, and never stepped back out? Which brings us to what most never dare to do, and so you begin to feel it. The holy daring it requires to assume the end without apology. Not to visit the fulfilled state as a guest, but to take up residence within it. To stop knocking and realize you are the door. For what you assume to be true of yourself, consistently, silently, reverently, becomes the garment reality must wear. It cannot do otherwise. There is no external judge, no committee of fate determining whether your desire is valid. There is only consciousness, clothing itself in form according to the pattern you hold within. Most speak of faith, but few embody it. They speak of trust, yet still peer through the veil for evidence. But you, when you truly remember, you turn within and become still. You accept your desire not as something to be attained, but as something already known, already felt, already real. And that assumption begins to live through you. Your words change. Your tone shifts. You begin to breathe differently, not out of effort, but out of congruence. You are no longer waiting for the promise to arrive. You are the promise unfolding. And here lies the mystery. When you live from the end, the signs begin to appear, not because you seek them, but because they must follow. They trail you like light follows flame, but you no longer need them. For once the inner world is claimed, the outer world is simply echo, an after-image of the imaginal act, a sacred mirage confirming what has already been accepted in spirit. This is what the world calls a miracle, but to the awakened, it is law, immutable, personal, immediate. The only delay is the time it takes for you to feel the end as real, not to imagine it fleetingly, but to enter it and abide, to walk in it during waking hours, to fall asleep in it at night. Whatsoever things ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Do you see? It is not the prayer that moves mountains, but the belief that you already hold what you ask for. The prayer is not a plea, it is a claim. Feel how this releases you. There is no one to convince, nothing to earn. The assumption is your permission slip. Your evidence is not in the world, it is in the knowing. And the more real you make the inner scene, the more the outer world bends to accommodate it. Not by force, but by law. Not by struggle, but by saturation. You do not push the river, you become the current. You do not chase the fruit, you become the root. And so when doubt whispers its cold breath, when the world seems to contradict the vision, you no longer react. You remember, you return, you revise. Not the world, but your inner posture toward it. For all experience is relationship, not with others, but with states. And each state brings its own companions, its own signs, its own patterns of life. What you feel yourself to be determines what shows up. You cannot fake the feeling. You cannot act from lack and expect abundance. You cannot lament and receive joy. You must inwardly be what you seek, not perform it, embody it. And that embodiment, quiet, steady, alive, becomes the only thing that matters, because from it all else flows. So you stop waiting, you stop explaining, you stop negotiating with the mirror. You simply change the face you wear within, and the reflection must obey. It has no life of its own. It does not argue or hesitate. It only reflects. And yet there is something deeper still, something beneath even the assumption itself, something not born of desire, but of remembrance, something you did not create, but simply awaken to. And this brings us to the secret hidden in every fulfilled dream. You do not truly create what you desire, you remember it. You unveil what was always folded within the depths of your being. The fulfilled dream is not summoned, it is recalled. It has whispered to you in the quiet moments, when the noise of the world briefly paused. In those silent flashes, you glimpsed it, not as something far off, but as a knowing too intimate for words. You are not the maker of the dream, you are its revealer, its sacred awakener. And this is the deeper truth that most overlook in their striving, that your desire is not random, nor vain, nor accidental. It is the echo of a state that already is, not a future possibility, but a timeless reality, calling you home. And what you call imagination is not invention, it is perception, inner perception of that which already exists in the eternal now. You are not trying to build something from nothing, you are remembering who you already are. There is no delay in fulfillment, because fulfillment exists now. The only journey is the inward shift of identity, the dissolving of the veil between what you hope for and what you are. The moment you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are no longer hoping, you are remembering, you are aligning with what God has already finished. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. Do you see? The end was already prepared. It was waiting for your inner alignment, not your outer effort. Your assumption is not creating the path, it is revealing the path already established in the unseen. The only labor required is the labor of belief, the spiritual discipline of remaining faithful to the vision within, regardless of appearances. So you stop consulting the senses, you stop asking the mirror if you are worthy. You no longer check the world for proof, because the truth no longer depends on it. You know, and this knowing becomes your sanctuary, your dwelling place. In the stillness of that knowing, the law begins to move, not hurriedly, not with drama or noise, but with quiet inevitability, like the sea pulling back into itself only to return with greater force. You feel the world soften around you. Old obstacles dissolve without resistance. People change. Circumstances shift. Paths open, not because you forced them to, but because you dared to live from the end that lives in you. And yet, the more you surrender to this truth, the more you begin to see your deepest desire was never about the thing at all, not the money, not the relationship, not the healing. These were only symbols, holy mirrors, reflecting the state you long to remember, the state of being whole, chosen, complete, the state of being one with God. It was never the thing that mattered, it was the state of being that came with it, the joy, the safety, the freedom, the radiance of being seen and known. This is what your soul truly seeks, to return to itself, to live as the divine imaginer, no longer lost in the shadows of separation. And so when you imagine the end, feel into it not as a distant prize, but as a homecoming. Let it wrap around you like a familiar warmth. Let it rise in you like something long buried, and now risen. Let it be quiet, and real, and yours. You are the operant power, not because you force the world to obey you, but because you are one with the source that gives the world its shape. You do not manifest from lack, you manifest from identity. You are not asking for change, you are becoming the change itself. Feel it now, the hush that follows this remembrance, the lightness in the gentle undoing of all striving. Let yourself sink into that inner sanctuary, where nothing is missing, and nothing must be earned. And just as that stillness begins to settle, something curious happens. A new possibility emerges, one that has always been there, just beyond the veil. Not just fulfillment, but transfiguration. Not just desire answered, but identity reborn. Which brings us to the hidden nature of assumption itself. It is not merely that your assumption creates a different outcome, it creates you anew. Every time you dare to fully occupy the end, to feel it as though no other version could ever be true, you are not just changing the scene, you are transfiguring the one who dwells in it. Assumption is not surface level performance, it is spiritual rebirth, a dying to the old identity, and a rising into the garment of your fulfilled self. Most try to take the old self into the new story. They imagine with fragments of the past still clinging to them beliefs of unworthiness, stories of lack, fears inherited from days now gone. But the law responds not to memory, not to pleading, but to the state you live from now. You cannot cling to the old and embody the new. You must let it fall away, not with force, but with forgiveness, not with effort, but with recognition. The former things are passed away, and behold, all things are made new. This is the sacred alchemy of imagination. It does not simply rearrange the external, it transforms the internal. You become the one for whom the desire is natural. You do not chase the state, you become the state. You feel from it, speak from it, sleep in it, and the world, faithful to its only master, reflects it. This is why the outer signs mean so little. They are not confirmation of progress, they are echoes, and echoes can only repeat what has already been declared in the stillness of your heart. Do not measure your journey by what has or has not appeared. Measure only by what you have dared to accept as true of yourself. The world is a shadow, it has no voice of its own, and yet, when the assumption is fully taken on, not visited, but worn like skin, you do not need to wonder if it is working. You feel it, you breathe differently, you carry yourself as the answer, not the question. You speak not from hope, but from the gentle certainty of fulfillment. It is a shift so quiet the world may not notice, but you do, and that is all that matters. For you are not here to collect signs like tokens of faith. You are here to awaken as the Word made flesh, to embody what you once only desired, to realize that your imagination is not a window into another world, it is the origin of this one, that the seen is always born of the unseen, and the unseen is shaped by your inner knowing. So when you imagine, do not look back, do not ask how or when. Those questions belong to the old self, the self that believes in delay, in distance, in deserving. The new self, the true self, knows that assumption is union. It is the wedding of your spirit to the state you desire, and what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Feel the holiness in that, the quiet power, the resting place. You are not striving to become, you are resting into what already is. You are not pushing time forward, you are stepping outside of it. You are not asking the world to shift, You are becoming the vibration from which the world must mirror back the new form, and as you live from this sacred end, as you dwell in the house of fulfillment, you begin to see that there is no such thing as impossible, only the unassumed, only the states you have not yet remembered as yours. The only limitation is your willingness to wear the garment, to feel the end as your present. So you practice, not with effort, but with delight. You fall asleep in the wish fulfilled. You revise the moments that don't align. You speak to yourself, not as the one becoming, but as the one already arrived. And slowly the shell of the old crumbles, not with noise, but like ice melting under the soft gaze of spring. And as that new self begins to emerge, not built but uncovered, you begin to ask a different question, a question not of manifestation, but of identity. Not how do I get this, but who am I if this is already so? And in that question lies the most radiant secret of all. The moment you ask, who am I if this is already so, a veil begins to lift. The world you once navigated as a seeker becomes unfamiliar, for you no longer walk as one in search of. The air tastes different, time bends differently. You no longer lean forward into becoming, you lean back into being. And in this sacred ease, something ancient stirs, a recognition so deep, so quiet, it doesn't shout, it remembers. You have not simply assumed a new outcome, you have unveiled a new self, not a version of who you used to be improved, but the truth of who you've always been revealed. The assumption wasn't a tactic, it was resurrection, a lifting of the stone from your own tomb. You died to the self who waited, who doubted, who looked outward for signs, and now, here in the stillness of fulfilled awareness, you rise not as a beggar of life, but as life itself. I am the resurrection and the life. Not someday, not if the signs align, not once conditions are right. I am. These two words, soft and absolute, are the foundation of all creation. They are not descriptors, they are declarations. To say I am, and follow it with anything, is to pour spirit into form, to call that identity into being. And the only question that remains is, what will you now claim as yourself? No need to rush the answer, let it unfold like a dawn, not pressed upon, but awaited in reverence. You need not know the how. The seed never worries about how it will become the tree, it simply knows what it is. Encoded in its stillness is a certainty more powerful than striving. So when you assume a state, you are not pretending, you are not tricking the universe, you are returning, you are identifying with the self who already dwells in the answered prayer, and in doing so, you shift the axis of your world. Circumstances rearrange, not because you willed them into place, but because they must now reflect the new center from which you live. You are the operant power, not the reactor, not the observer, the center from which all mirrors are hung. Feel the gravity of that, not as burden, but as sacred liberty. You are not at the mercy of the world, you are its maker in form. What you sustain within, the world must yield without. And this is not theory, this is law, law written into the very fabric of consciousness, eternal and personal, awaiting your remembrance. You are not waiting for the dream to come true, you are the dream dreaming itself. You are the word that became flesh, you are the image and likeness of I am. And now, as you sit with this, you may begin to feel something even more subtle emerge, not just peace, not just power, but reverence, a still and holy awe at what you are. For once you stop seeking signs, and begin assuming identity, you no longer fear the world, you bless it. You no longer grasp at moments, you consecrate them. Even the delays, the shadows, the empty spaces, they too become part of the unveiling, not punishments, but pauses, not rejection, but refinement. And in your quiet knowing, you begin to trust the silence, you begin to see with new eyes, eyes that do not search for signs, but create them. And so the need to prove, to explain, to convince fades like mist. You have remembered who moves the mirror, and that memory cannot be taken, only deepened. But even now, even in this peace, another layer invites you in. One few are ever still enough to touch, not the power to manifest, but the power to surrender identity altogether, to dissolve into something even more holy, even more whole, something no words can contain. And this is where the mystery begins to deepen. What happens when even the identity you've assumed begins to dissolve?
when the self who manifested the fulfilled desire, who lived from the end and stood in the light of the answered prayer, begins to fade, not in loss but in union, there is a sacred stillness deeper than fulfillment, a silence beneath the assumption. It is here the veil thins, not just between you and your desire, but between you and God. You begin to realize that what you desired was not just a new condition, it was communion, a return to the first breath, a remembrance, not of who you want to be, but of who you never ceased being. You imagined the end, yes, you wore it, felt it, lived it, but now, even the need to imagine falls away, like a ladder no longer needed after you have climbed. You are no longer the one who assumes, you are that which assumption reveals. This is the holy descent into formlessness, not emptiness, but fullness beyond form. The place where I am stands alone, needing no object, no condition, no name. You rest in pure being, you abide as the origin itself, and it is from this unshakable center that all things come, not as effort, but as expression, not as performance, but as natural outpouring. In Him we live, and move, and have our being. And when you touch this truth, not as an idea but as an experience, the world becomes very soft. You stop pushing against it. You stop asking it to become something else. You begin to see it as a mirror of the one being, playing infinite roles, yourself among them. This is not detachment. This is divine intimacy. The closer you draw inward, the more the outer loses its grip, until even the desire to control fades like dust from your fingers. What once felt urgent, now feels settled. What once felt far now feels native. And even as forms come and go, you remain, unchanged, unshaken, unnamed, the still point in the turning sphere. The irony is that once you enter this state of sacred surrender, the world responds faster than ever, not because you willed it, but because you no longer resist it. There is no longer a self to doubt, no ego to delay, no question left to answer. There is only the eternal and the world, falling into place around it like stars returning to the pattern that birthed them. You are no longer living from the end, you are the end. You are no longer seeking union with the divine, you are the divine remembering itself. Let your breath soften, let your thoughts loosen, let the grip you once held on needing proof fall quietly open. There is nothing left to chase. The kingdom is within you, the word is within you, the power is within you, not buried, but waiting, not silent, but still. And yet even here, something more whispers, not to reach, not to know, but to become aware of the one who is dreaming all of it, through your eyes, your body, your story, the dreamer and the dream, both holy, both one. And that awareness opens a door even deeper than manifestation, even deeper than fulfillment. It leads to the realization that there never was a waiting, never was a separation, never was a delay, only the game of forgetting, so that you might taste the joy of remembering. And now, as that remembering begins to shine from within, something even more subtle unfolds, a mystery hidden not in scripture or stars, but in the quiet between each breath.
There is a silence beneath the silence, a stillness so deep it does not move, yet from it all motion is born. As you relax into this inner sanctuary, you begin to feel it, not as a thought, but as a pulse, gentle and infinite. It does not speak in words, yet it utters everything. It does not rise and fall like emotion, yet it holds the shape of all feeling. This is where the dreamer dreams not just a scene, but the very idea of dreaming. This is where the I am rests, self-aware and untouched. You have shed the garments of seeking. You have stepped beyond the veil of effort. Now the air is different. It listens, it bends, it recognizes you not as a part of the story, but as the source of it. And the dream, once so vivid and pressing, softens into its rightful place as expression, not identity, as poetry, not proof. You are not here to control the story. You are here to know yourself as the author, not the one trying to fix the picture, but the one who moves the light within it. The law of assumption is no longer merely a principle to practice. It is a rhythm you live by, a sacred breath. You inhale the end, you exhale the form, and between that breath creation occurs. And as you abide in this rhythm, you begin to feel the most extraordinary thing, safety, not from circumstances, but within being itself. A divine safety, unmoved by what appears. A peace not dependent on outcome, but anchored in awareness. It is this peace that allows manifestation to happen swiftly and purely. For the moment you no longer need it, it is free to arrive. There is no urgency in truth, only revelation. And revelation is effortless. The longer you dwell in this state, the fulfilled state, the remembered self, the more subtle the shifts become. They are no longer loud, dramatic transformations. They are soft reconfigurations, gentle harmonies between inner and outer. You feel drawn to speak differently. You notice beauty in things you once ignored. You walk slower, as though something sacred is moving with you, because it is. You are the sacred movement. You are the holy word made visible, not because of what you possess, but because of what you radiate. You no longer ask, will it happen? That question has dissolved. In its place is a quiet knowing. It is already so. The only remaining gesture is gratitude, not for what will be, but for what is, for what you have already dared to accept as yours. And yet here too the journey bends. It no longer spirals outward into desires, but folds inward into identity. The surface wish dissolves into deeper longing, not for outcomes, but for union, not for signs, but for truth. You long not to have more, but to remember more, to awaken completely, to lose the illusion of separation once and for all. And this longing is not lack, it is calling. It is the gravity of God, drawing God back into itself. So you let yourself fall into deeper stillness, into wider awareness, into the nameless presence behind all names. You no longer need to say, I am this or I am that. You just are. And that is enough, more than enough. That is the entire seed of creation in its perfect rest. And yet even in that perfect rest, something moves, not because it must, but because love longs to express. And that movement births the world again, not as a place of waiting, but as a canvas of joy, a mirror of being, a playground of light. But what happens when the mirror forgets to be a mirror? When consciousness, so enchanted by its own reflection, begins to believe the image is real, this gentle amnesia, this is where the dance begins again. And it is here that the law takes on its most compassionate form. And when the mirror forgets, it is only reflecting. When consciousness becomes absorbed in its own projection and mistakes the image for the source, suffering arises, not as punishment, but as a call to remember. The outer world, taken as primary, begins to feel heavy, unpredictable, slow. The dream turns into weight. The echo begins to lead, and the voice that created it seems lost. But even in this descent into forgetting, the law remains faithful. It waits in stillness, untouched, like a hidden root beneath winter soil. The seed never ceases to know the sun, even when buried deep in frost. This forgetting is not failure. It is the veil that makes the remembrance possible. You fall asleep only to reawaken more fully. You wander only to discover the joy of returning. The law never accuses. It never punishes. It simply reflects. And in that reflection, whether distorted by doubt or luminous with faith, lies your opportunity to choose again, to turn again inward, to step back into the holy authority of assumption. Most try to fix the reflection. They struggle to rearrange the world like furniture in a room, hoping comfort will follow. But the mirror cannot change unless you do. The picture cannot shift unless the lens through which it is seen is cleaned. And the lens is your identity, the state you occupy, the voice you silently believe when no one else is listening. This is why the work is always inward, quiet, invisible, sacred. You are not here to demand life bend to your will. You are here to remember that it already bends to your being. And the moment you assume your rightful place as chooser, not chaser, everything begins to respond, not as reward, but as reflection. Even when you forget this, the moment you remember, the law reactivates with immediate precision. It does not need apology. It requires no penance. The Father does not demand that the prodigal explain where he has been. He runs to him while he is yet a great way off and clothes him in the best robe. So it is with your assumption. The moment you return to the state of the end, the world begins to shift, not because it is persuaded, but because it is compelled by truth. You may wonder, how many times must I return? How many times must I revise, re-enter, reaffirm the fulfilled state? As many times as it takes to know that you never truly left. Each moment of forgetting is merely a breath away from awakening. The separation was only ever in thought, never in reality. The power has not weakened. The law has not paused. Only your gaze wandered, and now it returns. Feel that. Feel how no mistake is final, how no condition is fixed, how all things are waiting on your assumption, not your words alone, but your inner consent to be as you desire to be. And from that sacred agreement, creation flows, not in time, but through time, not in force, but by grace. You do not have to wait for the mirror to change. You are the face it reflects. You are the stillness behind the form. You are the one who calls things that are not as though they were, and in calling, brings them into sight. But what if in this remembering, you not only reclaim the outer picture, but also glimpse the greater story? What if assumption was never about simply altering conditions, but revealing your divine inheritance? This is the unveiling the law has always pointed toward, and it waits now, just behind your next breath. What if every desire was never truly about the thing, but about your return to inheritance? What if the longing was never pointing you toward possession, but toward identity, toward the rediscovery of yourself as heir, not to a portion, but to the fullness of God's own nature? This is what the law has always whispered beneath the surface of your dreams. You are not a beggar, standing at the edge of the kingdom. You are the kingdom in bloom. To assume the wish fulfilled is to awaken as the one who has always had it. The law does not grant wishes. It reveals truth. It is the lifting of illusion, the dissolving of division. You think you are asking to receive, but truly, you are being invited to remember.
All that the Father hath is yours, not in some distant future, not when you have proven yourself, not once you have earned the right, but now, entirely, freely, lovingly. This is not metaphor. It is law, a law more intimate than breath, a law that turns back on itself, eternally seeking to reveal the hidden root of all form, consciousness imagining itself. The world you see is not outside of you. It is within the garment of your assumption, wearing your thought, shaped by your self-concept. When you live from the end, you are not pushing life forward. You are stepping into the memory of completion. You live in the end not to receive, but because you have already received. There is a difference so delicate, it can only be felt. One begs, one blesses, one strains, one rests, one waits for a sign, the other is the sign. When you allow yourself to be still, truly still, and feel as though your prayer were already answered, something timeless occurs. A soft folding of the imagined into the real, a union of seen and unseen. You begin to recognize that the feeling is not a tool, it is the bridge. The very act of feeling from the end is the manifestation. It is the word made flesh. And from that silent inner knowing, the outer must follow. You do not need to explain how. You do not need to force when. You simply need to be. In the quiet, in the dark, in the simplicity of your own awareness, you become what you have sought. And once you assume it as true, the law has no choice but to reflect it. It does not decide. It does not delay. It only does. According to your faith, be it unto you. Not according to effort. Not according to signs. Not according to worthiness. But faith felt, lived, inhabited. The sacred certainty that dares to walk in the unseen, as though it were visible. This is not arrogance. It is surrender. Surrendering the false self who waits, who strives, who believes power is elsewhere. And in that surrender, the true self rises. The I am behind all names, all forms, all stories. And from this center you begin to realize you never had to chase your desire. It has always belonged to you. It was wrapped in your being, sent from you and to you, a loop of divine remembrance. You dreamed it because it was already yours. So feel that now, not as something to earn, not as a step in a method, but as something remembered from long ago. Let the weight fall from your shoulders. Let the question dissolve. Let the mirror clear. And as you begin to rest in this sacred knowing, something else begins to open. A mystery not of having, but of becoming. Not of manifestation alone, but of the deeper identity the desire was always calling forth. The desire was never just about what you would hold in your hands. It was about who you would become in order to hold it. It was never truly about the condition, but the identity that condition called forth from the depths of your being. And as you sit quietly in the feeling of it already done, you begin to sense the deeper invitation hidden in every wish, not to gain, but to become, to clothe yourself in the radiance of the one for whom the desire is already natural. This is the secret most never uncover. They imagine outcomes without becoming the self who lives in them. They try to carry the old self into the new scene, unaware that the door will not open until the costume of lack is laid aside. For the world you seek does not exist outside of you. It lives within a particular state of being, and you must enter that state inwardly before its reflection can appear outwardly. You do not imagine to get, you imagine to be. And once you are, all that belongs to that version of you flows without resistance. It does not rush. It does not strain. It recognizes you because it has always been yours. So sit with this softly. Breathe into it gently. Ask not how do I get what I want, but who am I when it is already mine? Let the answer rise not from the mind, but from the stillness behind it. See yourself not from the eyes of wanting, but from the eyes of completion. How do you walk? How do you breathe? What do you no longer worry about? What do you no longer explain or chase? The transformation begins there, in the quiet re-identification with the self that has not the self that hopes. And it is here in this sacred substitution that the law moves swiftly. The shift in identity is the act of creation. The outer must obey, because it has no will of its own. It is only the servant of consciousness, reflecting faithfully what you have dared to believe. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, not by effort, not by performance, by a silent inner turning. The world need not know what happened. It will see the evidence soon enough. But long before the sign appears, the change has already occurred within. And now as you gently wear the state of fulfillment, you may begin to notice a strange sense of familiarity, as if this self you now assume is not new at all, but ancient. As if the peace that follows is not earned, but remembered. You are not creating a new version of yourself. You are returning to the true one, the one you were before the world told you otherwise, the one whose word is law, the one whose assumption carries creative authority. Let that identity deepen. Let it melt through every corner of your being. Let it undo the illusion of effort, the habit of waiting. You are not separate from the power. You are the power. You are the branch of the vine, and the vine is alive in you. And as this realization settles into your bones, a new light begins to shine behind the eyes, a softness in your gaze, a calm in your presence, not because things have changed, but because you have, and the world in its faithful nature will follow, not by force, but by law, not to reward you, but to reveal you. So pause now, not to act, not to affirm, simply to be, to feel the sweet stillness of the end assumed and lived, to know without proof, to rest without grasping. And as you rest, you may feel something even more subtle beginning to rise, a quiet joy that has no cause, a peace that does not need permission, a divine knowing that this, here and now, is the true beginning, that joy without cause, that soft golden sense of rightness that rises unbidden. It is the true evidence, not of things to come, but of who you are now remembering yourself to be. For joy is not the fruit of fulfilled conditions, it is the fragrance of fulfilled being. It is not earned, it is not produced by events. It is revealed when the veil of separation thins, and you behold your reflection in truth. When you no longer wait for the world to change, when you rest in the fullness of what already is within you, joy arises naturally, quietly, steadily, not with fireworks, but with the hush of morning light returning to a long-shadowed field. You begin to notice it in the smallest movements, in the breath that no longer rushes, in the thought that no longer argues, in the heart that no longer pleads. This is the beauty of living from the end. Not that you become someone else, but that you drop the performance of becoming, and simply are. You cease playing the part of the one waiting for a sign. You become the sign itself. You move through the world as the embodied answer, and the world, recognizing your stillness, reshapes itself around it. You do not command change by force. You invite it by identity. You do not will the harvest. You rest in the knowing that the seed has already taken root. And in that rest, all things grow toward you, not to fulfill you, but to reflect you. Most look to the world for reassurance. They ask for proof, for permission, for a whisper from the wind that says, you are allowed to believe. But the law waits for no confirmation. It waits for your inner decision. It waits for your spiritual consent. Not shouted from the mountaintop, but whispered in the sacred silence behind the mind. This is the holy moment, the instant you choose to dwell in the end, to saturate yourself in its tone, to speak as the one who has already received. That single decision, made in stillness, bends the arc of everything. It may not show at once. It may not announce itself in trumpet tones. But creation begins there, unseen, in the deep. The longer you remain faithful to that state, the less you concern yourself with evidence. The less you create the signposts, the more the signs begin to surround you. But they no longer matter, for the state itself is enough. You no longer live for the result. You live in the identity from which all results emerge. And in this identity, you realize something even more profound. You do not have to hold the state with clenched hands. You are not balancing a delicate thought that may slip away. You are the state. The branch does not struggle to remain attached to the vine. It is the vine, extended, and its fruit is effortless. I and my Father are one, not two beings joined by desire. One essence, unfolding, one life, breathing itself into form. When you claim the end is now, you do not become God. You remember that you have never been other than the expression of thought and movement. And as this remembering deepens, fear dissolves. Will begins, striving ceases. You no longer rush. You no longer plead. You walk softly, not because you are unsure, but because the ground is holy. The moment is holy. The breath is holy. You are no longer searching for signs, because the whole world has become one, a mirror of the stillness within you. And yet, even in the stillness, a question begins to arise, not from that, but from the wonder of it all. If all is given, if you already are, what then remains to be asked? What is left to become, when the becoming itself is complete? The answer, as always, waits not in thought, but in the quiet warmth just beneath it. That quiet warmth beneath the question is not seeking an answer. It is the answer. It is the presence that existed before you, formed any desire, before you ask for change, before you imagined yourself apart from what is. It does not speak in declarations. It waits. It waits. It listens without urgency, and in its still gaze, you remember again that nothing has ever been missing. Even now, the mind may stir, reaching for a next thing, a final step, a deeper method. But the spirit knows. The spirit is not climbing. It is descending, descending into embodiment, into simplicity, into being. All transformation begins there, not in doing, but in knowing, not in search, but in surrender. What remains to be asked, when you are already that which you sought? Only this. How fully can you allow yourself to feel it? How gently can you rest in the completeness that once seemed far off? This is the mystery most overlooked. Not that they must strive to become something more, but that they must become still enough to allow what already is. The law does not demand your labor. It asks only for your inner agreement, and that agreement comes not in words but in state, in the assumption that what you have desired is already so. You do not need to convince. You do not need to rehearse. You simply need to remember, deeply without resistance, that it is finished. And from that remembrance, everything flows. It becomes less about what you are doing, and more about where you are dwelling in consciousness. Are you waiting, watching, checking for confirmation, or are you abiding in the house of fulfillment? To dwell in the end is to stop measuring time by outer signs. It is to let the inner reality become your first and final word. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. The secret place is not far. It is not hidden in temples or mountains. It is within you, the sanctuary of assumed identity, the holy of holies behind your thoughts. And when you take up residence there, the world bends to meet you, though you no longer seek its proof. This is how peace becomes natural, not because circumstances calm, but because you no longer place your awareness in them. Your roots sink into unseen soil. You walk by faith, and faith is not belief in the future. It is presence in the eternal now. It is feeling the end not as possibility, but as embodiment. And from this embodiment, there is no need to ask again. There is no need to repeat the desire. For what you are now holding within, what you are being, is already claimed, already complete. You no longer speak to the world. You speak from the end, and the world echoes back in perfect fidelity. You become quiet, not empty, but full, not passive, but sure. The kind of stillness that creates earthquakes in silence. The kind of stillness that parts the seas, not through force, but through identity. The Red Sea was not split by Moses' effort, but by the authority of presence. So it is with you. You are not here to wait for the sea to move. You are here to walk as though it already has. And as that certainty becomes natural, something even more wondrous unfolds. You realize that even the desire itself was grace. Even the longing was love disguised, not to show you what you lack, but to awaken what you are. And now, as that realization takes root, something deeper begins to whisper. A truth that precedes all dreams. The truth you've asked for words, yet already known.
That whisper, the one that hums beneath the desire, beneath even the fulfilled state, carries the sound of something far more ancient than your asking. It is not the echo of what you want. It is the memory of what you are. Long before you named a goal, long before you imagined a scene, long before the world shaped your sense of self, there was only this: I am. Not I am this or I am that. Simply, eternally, I am. And this is the root of the law. Not technique, not ritual, not striving. but being, pure, unqualified, self-aware being. It does not rush, it does not need, it simply knows, and everything it touches becomes what it assumes itself to be. This is the power beneath all powers, the word beneath all prayers, the stillness beneath all movement. When you feel this, not as an idea, but as a presence, you no longer ask how to manifest. You begin to see that manifestation is just one veil of remembrance, and that behind every dream is the deeper dreamer, the one who does not strive to create, but who is creation itself, the one who holds the stars in rhythm and breathes galaxies into silence, not with effort, but with knowing, and you are that knowing in human form. This is why the law is simple, not always easy, for the noise of the world is loud, but it is simple. The world cannot create itself, it only reflects. The mirror waits for your face, the garden waits for your seed, the stage waits for your role to be assumed. You need not wait for perfect thoughts, you need not control every image, you need only return again and again to the truth that your state of being is causation, that what you accept as real within yourself will shape the world around you. It must, it cannot not. So when doubt arises, you do not wrestle it, you do not fight shadows, you turn on the light, you remember, you rest, you revise, not the world but the self who is watching it. And the moment you shift, the scene begins to follow. This is the quiet power of assumption, that by feeling from the end you bring the end near, not in distance, but in awareness. And what is near in awareness becomes near in form. Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and show thee great and mighty things, which thou knowest not. But this call is not with your lips, it is not a shout into the sky, it is the inward turn, the choice to feel now what the world has not yet shown. It is the willingness to walk as if the prayer were already answered, as if the harvest were already ripe. And when you live like this, the world bends, it bows, not because you demanded, but because you became. You are not separate from the fulfillment, you are its container, you are its channel, you are the end clothed in breath and time. There is no power outside of this, there is no authority beyond your assumption. No condition can override what you sustain in being. You are the operant power, not someday, not after mastery, now. And now, something gentle begins to unfold. The desire no longer pulls, it settles. The question no longer presses, it opens. You begin to feel the difference between wanting and knowing, between grasping and being. And in that space, something holy begins to rise, not from above, but from within. That rising from within is not new, it is not sudden, it is the slow and sacred surfacing of what has always been true. Like the sun appearing at the edge of sleep, it brings no sound, only light. It does not enter from without, it emerges from the deep, from that place where your identity and God's being are no longer separate things, but one seamless unfolding. You do not chase it, you do not earn it, you remember it, and in that remembrance, a quiet holiness fills the moment. There is nothing to add, nothing to fix, only the gentle pulsing recognition that you are the answer to your own prayer, clothed in breath and clothed in now. This is why the law asks not for striving, but for assumption, not for signs, but for state, because when you assume the end, you are not making something happen, you are surrendering to what already is, you are yielding to the self who has always had it, and the world in its perfect echo rearranges itself around this return. There is no tension in the real, no pressure in the fulfilled state, only stillness, only inevitability. The imagined becomes flesh, not through force but through alignment, and alignment happens in quiet, it happens in trust, it happens in the soft willingness to believe the unseen more deeply than the seen. Most wait for evidence before they claim the truth, but in this path, you claim the truth before the evidence, and the moment you do, the evidence begins to emerge, not because you chased it, but because you no longer needed it to believe. You are no longer the one who waits, you are the one who is, and that shift, subtle, internal, absolute, is the birthplace of every miracle. You begin to feel yourself differently. Your posture changes, not because you are performing confidence, but because you have rested into authority, the authority of identity, the authority of I am, and from this sacred stillness, you speak, not to change the world, but to reflect the world already changed in you. Let yourself sink into that, not as effort, as surrender. Let the idea of delay fall away like dust. Let the question of worthiness dissolve like mist. Feel the truth that all you could ever desire is already woven into the garment of being, and the moment you assume it, live from it, rest in it, it begins to reflect outward, not immediately perhaps, but certainly. Just as a seed placed in soil does not bloom the same day, yet contains the flower from the start, so your assumption, though unseen, is already working, not because of time, but because of law. And the more often you return to the end, not as a place to visit, but as the only place to dwell, the more you notice the change in atmosphere, around you, within you, in your words, in your silences, in the way the world begins to respond without your asking, not because it is reacting, but because it is remembering you. This is not fantasy, this is the pattern of creation, the Word made flesh, the invisible becoming form through the doorway of consciousness. So dwell there, not for a moment,
but as home. Live in the wish fulfilled as though no other version could possibly be. Feel it until it feels familiar, until it stops feeling like hope and starts feeling like memory. And when it does, when the assumption feels like truth, not effort, the signs will come, the bridges will form, the unseen will reach out to meet you. But by then you will not need the signs, for the deepest part of you will already know it is done. It has always been done, and now it begins to appear. It begins to appear, not because you have summoned it, but because you have matched it. The outer cannot withhold what the inner has already accepted. The scene must conform, the form must follow. The world is not granting you your desire, it is unfolding it from within. The pattern has been impressed, and the clay of circumstance shapes itself accordingly, not in resistance, but in quiet obedience. And what's most extraordinary is how ordinary it feels, not dramatic, not loud, just right, just natural. The fulfillment you once reached for arrives not with thunder, but with the sound of a key turning in a familiar lock. You recognize it, not as something you chased, but as something that always belonged. It fits because it came from you. It answers not your need, but your assumption. And in that moment, you remember that the bridge was never built by your effort. It was walked in trust, step by invisible step. By the time the world shows it to you, you have already lived it inwardly. The applause has long since quieted in your heart. You are not surprised. You are home, and home never shocks you. It settles you. This is why the signs follow. They do not precede. They are not the cause. They are the echo. And when you understand this, you stop waiting for confirmation. You no longer delay your peace until proof arrives. You realize the only true confirmation is within, the stillness that no longer needs to be reassured. The knowing that holds no questions. You will see it when you no longer need to. You will touch it when you've already felt it. And this is the divine paradox of creation, that the outer only reflects what the inner has already known to be true. Feel how that quiets the mind. There is nothing to search for. There is no better moment coming. There is only the present assumption, radiant and alive, shaping the fabric of time like a weaver who needs no thread but thought. You begin to walk differently, not to get somewhere, but as one already arrived. You speak not from hope, but from embodiment. You move through the world as though it were catching up to a truth you've already claimed. And it is. It always is. If the world delays, it is not denying. It is reflecting back the shadow of indecision. If it moves quickly, it is not favoring. It is mirroring the clarity of your inner position. There is no one to convince, no thing to chase. There is only this, the sacred act of knowing. And when you know without needing, without waiting, without wavering, the law fulfills itself. You do not need to manage the how. That is not your role. Yours is to assume and remain. Yours is to become the version of you for whom it is already so, and let life take care of the rest. Be still now. Let your breath soften. Let your chest open. Let your awareness return to the state that holds your desire as already done. Not as wishful thinking, but as quiet fact. You do not have to announce it. You do not have to defend it. You only have to dwell in it, to rest in it until it rests in you. And as you do, you'll feel it. The shift, the tilt, the folding of the future into now. And you'll know without question that something has turned in your favor. Not because you saw the sign, but because you became it. And in this still and radiant place, another invitation rises. One not to receive more, but to become more deeply what you already are. To explore the nature of self, not just as creator, but as creation itself. And in that exploration, to find the divine hidden in plain sight, waiting only to be assumed. To assume is not only to declare the end, it is to merge with the one who dwells there. And when you merge, when you no longer imagine the desire from afar, but feel it as the very rhythm of your being, you are no longer playing the part of creator alone. You become the creation, alive with the signature of the imagined, embodying what once seemed separate, distant or delayed. This is the hidden wonder within the law, that as you assume the state, you are not simply bringing something into view, you are dissolving the line between who you were and who you have remembered yourself to be. You are not merely altering circumstances, you are unearthing your true form. You become the healed, the chosen, the beloved, not because you have been changed by outer permission, but because you have stepped into the garment of truth and worn it as your skin. And the outer, having no will of its own, reflects the clarity of your embodiment. It cannot resist you. It cannot delay. It only reveals. This is why silence becomes so sacred along this path. Because in the stillness, you stop looking for the world to catch up. You stop reaching for clues. You rest in the awareness that it already has. You feel the desire already fulfilled, not as fantasy, but as inner certainty. And that feeling becomes the pulse of your new identity. Your words shift. Your gaze softens. You carry yourself as the completed intention. You may appear unchanged to the world, but something deep within has turned, a soft and irreversible pivot. You no longer hope for it. You are it, and the world, obedient to the law, reconfigures itself around this silent transformation. This is not theory. This is not abstraction. This is law. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Not so shall he become, but so is he. The moment the inner feeling becomes dominant, the world must follow. It cannot resist the magnetism of being. It cannot hold back what has already been received in spirit. So you practice, not with striving but with surrender. You return to the scene, the state, the feeling, not because it is unfinished, but because you are choosing again to dwell there. You are keeping the fire lit, not because it needs tending, but because it is your joy to remain in the warmth. The longer you live in the end, the more natural it becomes. The more your body, your speech, your energy begin to align, not with effort, but with inevitability. And what once required imagination imagination now becomes memory. What once felt far now feels native. What once felt like a dream now feels like home. And this is the mystery. Your greatest power was never in asking. It was in remembering. Your true work was never to strive, but to rest. Not to attract, but to accept. Not to wish, but to wear. You wear the state inwardly, and life wraps itself around you in matching fabric. Every thread of reality responding to the inner pattern you have sustained in silence. And just when you think you have seen the fullness of this law, a new depth reveals itself. A space where you no longer live from desire, but from divine identity, where creation becomes less about changing the world, and more about expressing the fullness of the one who imagined it all. And this brings us to a truth so tender, it can only be received in stillness, a truth that unveils not just what you can do, but what you are. You are not merely one who imagines, you are imagination itself, dreaming in form. The desire was never something you summoned, it was something you revealed, like a sculptor brushing dust from stone to uncover what had always been. And now the deeper unveiling begins, not of the wish fulfilled, but of the one who fulfills all things simply by being. This is the holy shift, when you no longer see yourself as the one who must imagine to create, but as the very life behind the image, not the painter, but the light that makes the canvas visible. You move from doing to being, from effort to essence, and in that essence, all becomes still, not because nothing moves, but because movement flows from a place of unshakable stillness. This is not detachment, this is union. You and the image are no longer separate. The desired and the desirer become one. You assume not just the outcome, but the nature of the one who never lacked it. You walk as the fulfilled self, not because you are trying to become something, but because you have ceased denying who you are. And in this state, miracles no longer feel like miracles. They feel like alignment, like the echo finally catching up to the voice, like the world remembering you just as you remembered yourself. There is no noise in this kind of becoming, no resistance, no urgency, only the hush of holy remembrance. And in that hush, you begin to see that even the desire itself was a divine invitation to wake up, to stop delaying your inheritance, to stop placing your peace at the feet of external signs, to step inward and take the throne. For the kingdom of heaven is not a place, it is a state of consciousness, and you are never locked out, you are only ever called in. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, not someday, not once you are worthy, now, always now. The law has never been about effort, it has always been about alignment, and alignment is simply the willingness to be what you desire, not to act as if, but to feel as is, to embody the knowing that nothing is withheld, that what you see in imagination is not a preview, it is the source. And now, something soft begins to dissolve, the search, the performance, the old self who waited for signs, measured worth and feared time. That self begins to fall away, not in struggle but in grace, because it is no longer needed. The truth has arrived, and illusion has no breath to stand in its presence. You begin to live not from desire, but from fullness, not from seeking, but from giving. Your state becomes your offering, and the world responds accordingly. The more you give thanks for what is, the more is becomes visible. The outer bends to reflect the inward thanks, and gratitude becomes not reaction but causation. And yet, as you walk in this new stillness, you may begin to sense something even more profound, a presence not imagined, but eternal, a stillness not chosen but inherited, the awareness that long before you ever desired a thing, there was something desiring to express itself through you, and that something is not separate from you at all. That something, the one that has always moved behind your eyes, breathed behind your thoughts, whispered in your longings, it is not other than you, it is not distant, it is not waiting to be invited in, it has been speaking through your desires all along, not as requests but as revelations. Every dream you've dared to feel was the voice of the divine echoing through the corridors of your own soul, reminding you of what already is. You have thought you were the one imagining, but what if imagination is God in you remembering itself? What if the images you hold are not wishful sketches of possibility, but sacred blueprints of remembrance? What if the end you seek is simply the beginning seen from the other side? You do not have to understand it with the mind. It cannot be reduced to logic. It can only be known in stillness, in that delicate inner space where effort fades and being takes its rightful seat. There you do not ask, will it come? You feel it is already here. And from that awareness, form takes shape, not as a favor granted, but as a mirror bowed in reverence to the one who finally looked within. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. It is not a statement of chronology, it is a statement of identity. The desire you hold and the fulfillment you envision are bookends of the same being. You are not moving toward the end, you are returning to yourself. Feel how this shifts everything. The journey is not upward, it is inward. It is not a climb, it is a remembrance. You are not ascending to meet God. You are awakening to the truth that God is your own awareness, silently assuming every form you dare to believe into being. And this is why you must stop waiting. Waiting implies the power is elsewhere. Waiting assumes the law has not yet heard you. But there is no waiting in the fulfilled state. There is only rest, only being. And when you are truly being, the signs follow, not to convince you but to reflect you. You are not here to follow signs. You are here to cause them. They appear because you have assumed the state that requires them. They bloom along your path like flowers awakened by your footsteps. You no longer seek proof. You embody it. Even when the world seems unchanged, even when circumstances speak otherwise, you walk in the assurance that the imaginal act has been sown, and what is sown must grow, not by your hands, By law, the season of delay may appear long to the eyes, but it is always brief to the one who knows. The soil does not forget the seed, the mirror does not forget the face, the law does not forget the state. So return to the end, gently, regularly, joyfully, not to make something happen, but because the end is where your truth lives. It is your home, and the more you dwell there, the more the outer begins to echo back what the inner has already declared. You'll see it not as surprise, but as harmony. And in this harmony, something even greater begins to unfold. Not just a life reshaped, but a soul unveiled. Not just the fulfillment of desire, but the realization of union. And in that union, the next layer of remembrance begins.
The next layer of remembrance does not arrive with fanfare. It unfolds like dawn through a veil, gradual, golden, so familiar it almost goes unnoticed. It is not a new revelation, but a deeper settling into what has always been true, that the one who assumed the state and the one who fulfills it are not two. They are one, and the one is you. You begin to see with clearer eyes that there is no gap between the imaginer and the imagined. The self who sees and the thing that is seen are stitched together by the invisible thread of consciousness. There is no outside, no beyond, no waiting place, only states, consciousness wearing garments of belief, cycling through scenes that confirm what you have dared to accept as true. So the question begins to change. No longer, how do I get what I desire? But which self am I now willing to be? And this question is the key to the kingdom, for all things are yours the moment you claim the state, not in time, in truth, in being. And to claim a state does not require effort. It requires consent, spiritual consent to let go of the familiar self who waits, who doubts, who checks the clock of circumstance, and instead to inhabit the end, fully and softly, as though it were your very breath. You are not pretending, you are remembering. You are not trying to believe, you are letting belief live through you. And the law, impartial and exact, receives your state without judgment. It does not weigh your past, it does not assess your worth. It reflects only what you hold as normal, what you feel to be true without contradiction. If you believe yourself free, the world becomes a mirror of freedom. If you live from lack, lack returns itself, not as punishment, but as faithful echo. Feel the mercy in this, the grace. You are not being tested, you are being reflected, and each moment is a new invitation to assume again, to dwell again, to revise your inner posture until the outer world has no choice but to follow. And follow it will, not because you have earned, but because you have embodied. You no longer wait for signs to tell you it's done. You walk as the one for whom it has always been done. The delay was never in reality, it was only in identity, and the moment you shift your dwelling place in consciousness, the scene begins to rewrite itself around you. This is not arrogance, this is alignment. The true self makes no demands, it simply assumes, and the world conforms. It does not push, it permits. It does not question, it rests. This is why the one who lives from the end becomes magnetic, not because they chase, but because they carry the fragrance of fulfillment, and fulfillment draws unto itself all that matches it. So let your breath slow, let your heart soften, return to the end, not as effort, but as exhale. You do not need to get ready, you are ready. You do not need to ask for more light. You only need to open the curtain and see that it has been shining all along. And just as you begin to dwell in that soft recognition, something even deeper stirs. Not another desire, but a question that echoes beyond desire. What remains when there is nothing left to want? What awakens when you no longer seek to become, but simply allow yourself to be? What awakens when there is nothing left to want? When the longing dissolves not because it has been answered, but because you have remembered that you were never apart from the answer. There is a stillness that follows fulfillment, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of arrival. You are no longer reaching. You are resting in the sacred knowing that all has already been given, and in that stillness, something deeper stirs. A gentle presence, vast and tender, too intimate to describe, yet unmistakably known. It is not a new desire. It is not a new dream. It is the essence that gave rise to all dreaming. It does not say, here is what you may have. It says, here is what you are. You are the light behind the image, the source behind the story, the life that gives breath to every scene you've ever imagined. You are not the character waiting for the script to shift. You are the hand that wrote it. And once you recognize this, not as philosophy, but as embodied truth, you no longer wait for change. You radiate it. The state you assume does not create something external. It reveals the inner essence clothed in a new form. The one who assumed health was not healing a body. They were remembering wholeness. The one who assumed love was not summoning another. They were unveiling the beloved within. The one who assumed abundance was not reaching toward gain. They were uncovering the infinite that had been masked by fear. And the world, bound by law to reflect the substance of consciousness, becomes a mirror too clean to distort the image. It returns to you only what you have already accepted in stillness. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Not in heaven, but here, in reflection, in expression, in every moment where you no longer project lack and instead allow truth to rise. This is where the work of assuming deepens into devotion, not to a goal, but to presence. You are not assuming to get, you are assuming to be, and being becomes its own reward. You become intimate with your states, aware of their fragrance, their tone, their tempo. You begin to feel the difference between pretending and abiding, between wishing and knowing. You live from the end not because you are clever, but because it is the only place where peace is real.
You speak from the wish fulfilled not to impress the law, but because your inner voice has found its truest home. You revise not to fix the past, but to reclaim the author's pen in the present. The power is not in what you do. The power is in who you allow yourself to be now. And if now feels quiet, let it. If it feels still, rest in it. For creation begins in that stillness. The most powerful assumption is the one so fully embodied, so gently believed, that it needs no reinforcement. It simply is, and the world bends around that inner isness, like clay softening in the potter's hand. So let it bend, let it shape, let it move without your control. Your work is not to manage the unfolding. Your work is to remain faithful to the state from which it flows. And as you do, a subtle unfolding continues, not of something gained, but of something shed. A soft peeling back of every layer you've mistaken for self, until only the light remains, unfiltered, unbound. And in that light, a truth begins to shine so clearly, so quietly, you almost dare not speak it. You almost dare not speak it, not because it is fragile, but because it is whole. Because once it is seen, truly seen, the illusion of effort cannot survive. The moment you behold yourself as the light, rather than the one seeking it, something irreversible occurs. Not dramatic, not loud, but steady, like the hush that falls when the truth enters the room. You are not here to become worthy of your desire. You are here to realize that your desire was born from your worth. It emerged from what already is, not to grant you power, but to awaken you to the power you've never lost. You are not incomplete, reaching outward. You are whole, expressing inwardly, and the law simply shapes that inner knowing into form. There is no gap between you and the thing you want, only the assumption that such a gap exists. And that assumption is the veil. It is the dream of separation. But the moment you drop the story that says, I do not yet have it, the curtain lifts. The moment you feel the end is here, the beginning is dissolved. You have entered the circle of completion, where all things already exist. You begin to walk more slowly, not from hesitation, but from reverence. You begin to speak more softly, not from uncertainty, but from inner authority. You no longer need to explain your vision, because you are living from it. You no longer argue with appearances, because you have remembered their source, and the source is always you, your consciousness, your identity, your felt reality. This is why assumption is not just a tool. It is a return, a remembering of the one who never lacked, never waited, never needed the world's permission to be. You assume not to trick the universe into delivering something. You assume because it is the truest way of saying I am. And the moment you say it, not with your mouth but with your being, the world is rewritten. Let it be rewritten. Let what once felt fixed melt into possibility. Let what once felt delayed become present. The mirror does not ask you to try harder. It only waits for you to see differently. And when you see differently, when you no longer filter the world through longing, but through fulfillment, the signs you once begged for begin to appear, not as validation, but as reflection. You were never waiting for them. They were waiting for you. This is the great paradox, the holy reversal of the old way, that when you stop needing signs, the signs arrive. When you stop waiting, fulfillment enters. When you stop seeking, you find that you are what you were seeking. And so the question softens into silence. Who are you when there is nothing left to chase? You are the dreamer who has awakened inside the dream. You are the word that has returned to itself. You are the answered prayer, walking through the garden you once thought was lost. And in this holy place, something tender begins to arise, not for more, but for deeper, not to manifest again, but to embody more purely, to live not as one who knows the law, but as one who is the law in motion. And this opens the door to the most sacred realization of all. The most sacred realization is not that you can manifest what you want, it is that you were never without it. The truest unveiling is not about acquiring, but remembering. The world, for all its motion and mirrors, has always been trying to show you one thing. You are the source clothed in form. You are the breath behind the wind, the seed behind the blossom, the light behind the eye. And now, as you stand in the silence between breaths, you feel it, something deeper than power, gentler than certainty, softer than knowing. It is not an answer. It is not even a state. It is the presence beneath all states, the holy I am that never changes, though it appears as all things. This is where the law points, not toward a better version of you, but toward the truth that there is no version. There is only being. And being, when accepted fully, naturally gives rise to every form that matches its tone. You do not need to decide what will come. You need only to rest in what you are. The rest unfolds itself. To live this way is to stop tracking time. It is to stop watching for results. It is to let go of the story that says something must shift before you can rest. You rest first. You assume the end first. And from that rest, movement flows. Not chaotic, not forced, but rhythmic, graceful, inevitable. You become the one for whom the end is not an outcome. It is a dwelling place. You abide there, and the outer becomes a faithful echo, ringing back to you the shape of your inner sanctuary. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. That secret place is not beyond the stars. It is within. It is your inner assumption, your quiet decision to live as the one who already is. And when you dwell there, not visit, not rehearse, but live, the world bends without resistance, and the bending no longer surprises you. It feels natural, like sunlight filtering through leaves, like water finding the shape of its container. You no longer count days. You no longer consult the mirror. You simply remain in the state, and all that matches it must come. It must, not because of chance, but because of law. This is where you stop asking. You stop waiting. You stop measuring the gap between desire and fulfillment, because you've stepped into the only moment that ever matters now. You do not feel for what is coming, you feel from what already is. You move not as the seeker, but as the self who is found. And in that movement the veil thins again. You begin to sense that you were never truly desiring things but awakening through them. You were never lacking. You were unfolding. You were never waiting. You were being called inward again and again until you chose to live from the end and remain. And now from this place of remembrance another kind of love begins to rise. Not love for what you will gain, but love for what is. A reverence for the stillness, a devotion to the unseen, a calm awareness that you are no longer becoming, you are revealing. And from that revelation, a new dimension of identity begins to emerge. This new dimension of identity does not arrive with thunder. It arrives with recognition, a slow sacred unfolding that reveals not a new self, but the true self that has been clothed in dreams and roles and assumptions. You do not grow into it. You uncover it. You do not reach toward it. You remember what has always lived beneath your longing. It is not the version of you who manifests. It is the one who knows there was never anything to manifest in the first place. The one who sees that every scene was a garment, every desire a mirror, every fulfillment a clue pointing back to origin. And what is that origin? It is pure being, wordless, timeless, not bound by outcomes or forms. The unconditioned I am, silent, creative, radiant. This is the self behind all assumptions. The self that assumes not out of need but out of joy, not to change the world but to express the richness of its own nature through form. As this self is remembered, your relationship with desire transforms. You no longer feel desire as something separate, waiting to be bridged. You feel it as a signal, a holy whisper that says, step into the state where this is already true. And you do, not because you must, but because it is your joy to do so. Assumption becomes devotion, a sacred art, a daily remembering of who you are and what you carry. This is why the one who assumes does not wait for signs. They do not peer into the world for permission to believe. Their belief is the light that calls the world to rearrange. Their inner knowing becomes the mold through which life is poured, and the signs when they come are not surprises, they are echoes, familiar quiet affirmations that the world has remembered you the way you have remembered yourself. This is the law in its highest form, not as tool but as reflection of identity. You are the vine, you are the root, you are the cause clothed in the illusion of effect. And the moment you return to the awareness of this truth, all striving ceases. You are no longer living from the future. You are living from the fullness of now. You are not rehearsing a better version of yourself. You are embodying the eternal. You are the operant power, not because you manipulate energy or command conditions, but because you have chosen to abide in the one place where all is already done. Before Abraham was, I am. These words do not mark the passing of time. They declare the timelessness of being. Before the desire, before the story, before the dream, you were, and you are. You never lacked the power. You only fell asleep to it. But now you wake, and in this waking there is nothing more to prove, nothing more to earn, only being, only assumption, only the soft and steady pulse of awareness taking shape in form, again and again. So rest here in the warmth of this realization. Feel how the need to grasp has vanished, how the air itself feels lighter. The world is no longer something to manage, it is something to bless, not because it has given you what you wanted, but because it has reflected what you dared to believe. And just as you settle into that peace, something begins to call from even deeper stillness, a voice not of instruction but of union, a presence that does not ask who you will become, but invites you to remember what has never changed. What has never changed does not speak in thunder or language. It hums beneath every word you've ever spoken, waiting patiently for your gaze to turn inward. It is the part of you that has never been touched by striving, never been marked by delay, never known separation. It was present before the desire took shape. It remained when doubt clouded the mirror, and it is here now, quiet and whole, gently reminding you that you have never left yourself. This is the sacred center, the place from which all assumption flows, yet is itself beyond all needing. Here you are not the one trying to remember. You are the remembrance itself. You are the stillness before the word, the flame before the spark. And from this place assumption becomes not a means to an end, but the echo of divine being expressing itself in time. You are not the one who reaches, you are the one who radiates. And when you truly grasp this, not intellectually but as the living tone of your presence, then even the concept of manifestation begins to fall away. You are no longer trying to bring something forth. You are simply allowing what has always been true to appear, and what appears effortlessly. This is why signs come to the one who no longer waits for them, the one who has stopped scanning the horizon and turned inward toward the source, the one who has stopped asking, when will it come, and started living as if it already has, because it has in the only place that ever mattered, within. From this state, all things flow to you, not as gifts but as mirrors, not as rewards but as revelations. The world does not bend to please you, it bends to reflect you. And when you stand still in the truth of your fulfilled identity, reality has no choice but to reveal the reflection that matches your posture. You are the operant power, not by force but by consciousness, by being, by the quiet continual assumption that you already are what you once thought you needed to become. And the more you dwell in that identity, not occasionally, not conditionally, but with the ease of breath, the more seamless the reflection becomes. You no longer need to track the movement of outer things. You trust the unfolding, you revise with love, you persist with calm, and you sleep. Oh, how you sleep, wrapped in the peace of knowing the end has already been accepted, and therefore must be shown. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. And what is this peace but the fruit of unwavering assumption? The mind stayed not on waiting, but on being, not on watching, but on knowing. This is the real work, not to make something happen, but to remain in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, until the world forgets to argue with it. And so you no longer seek signs, you become one. Your presence carries the echo of the answered prayer. Your silence becomes magnetic. People respond to the shift in you without knowing why. Circumstances soften, delays dissolve, bridges appear. But none of this surprises you, because you are no longer waiting for it. You are walking in it. And just when you think you've arrived at the summit, a still sacred whisper opens again. What if this was never about changing the world, but about remembering you were never apart from its author? What if the deepest fulfillment wasn't in what you received, but in who you are now willing to be, without question, without delay, without need for proof?
What if you no longer needed the world to echo back your identity, because the echo already lives in you? What if the final act of faith wasn't to wait for reflection, but to love yourself so completely in the assumption that the reflection becomes irrelevant? This is where the veil thins, not because something arrives, but because nothing is missing. You are not becoming the operant power. You have never stopped being it. What has shifted is not your capacity, but your attention. You are no longer leaning outward for approval. You are no longer scanning the sky for signs. You have become inwardly still enough to hear the whisper of your own being say, I have always known, and that knowing carries a weightless strength, not the strength of striving, but of surrender, not of force, but of rest, a power so serene it needs no proof, a faith so embodied it forgets to ask. In this stillness, you no longer act to make something happen. You act because it has happened. You do not visualize to summon. You remember to dwell. Assumption becomes as natural as breath. You wake in the morning, and before the senses have time to speak, you are already clothed in the end. You walk as the one who already is, and you no longer question when or how. You simply are. You do not need to finish the story, because you are already standing at the last page reading backwards. And when doubt rises, as it sometimes will, you do not panic. You do not beg. You return. You revise, gently, softly, as one who knows the mirror bends with ease, as one who knows the scene is only smoke around the fire of awareness. You are no longer interested in reacting to appearances. You are here to impress new ones through your state. Let the weak say, I am strong, not because they are pretending, but because the word rewrites the world. Let the lacking say, I am full. Let the unseen say, I am known. Let the waiting say, I have arrived. And as you say it, not aloud but inwardly, something begins to align, first within, then without, then both at once, until no line remains. You begin to live in rhythm with yourself, no longer fractured between hoping and having. You feel the unity of the desire and its fulfillment wrapped in a single now. You feel the grace of knowing that everything you once thought you had to seek was always flowing from the self you are now willing to be. And the signs, yes, they still come, but they are soft, humble. They arrive not to convince you, but to join you in the truth you have already embraced. You bless them, but you do not depend on them. You are the source of their movement, not their follower. The mirror no longer defines your face. Your face defines the mirror. And just as this realization begins to settle into your bones, another question stirs, not from lack, but from divine curiosity. What happens when you stop using imagination only to fulfill desire, and begin using it simply to be what God is, creative, whole, and free? What happens when you no longer use imagination to acquire but to express, when it is no longer a bridge to reach the future, but a window through which God dreams the now? What begins to unfold when desire is no longer the signal of something missing, but the fragrance of something remembered? In this gentle reversal, you awaken not only as the one who imagines, but as imagination itself, formless, fluid, and free. And from this place, assumption is no longer confined to circumstance. It becomes art. It becomes worship. You are not fixing life. You are composing it. With each inner movement, you offer form to the formless. With every scene you dwell in, you give shape to the invisible. You do not ask the world to change. You allow your state to sing a new song, and the world harmonizes without hesitation. This is the deepest truth of the law. You are not here to get. You are here to give life to what only you can embody. You are here to express the infinite in your own sacred pattern, and the moment you stop waiting for signs, you begin to move like the one who knows that all things are added unto the one who assumes rightly, gently, faithfully. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. But the kingdom is not found in clouds or stars, it is within, and his righteousness, his right use of imagination is yours. It is your birthright to see with clarity, to assume with conviction, to live from the end with the peace of one who has never left it. So you walk in this awareness, not to reach a destination, but because this is your nature, to imagine and to know that it is so, to feel into the state and abide there, not with force but with reverence, not because you must prove anything, but because it is your joy to witness the world blossom around your being. And as you witness it, you begin to lose interest in evidence. You no longer track how quickly things come. You no longer compare or calculate. You have tasted the stillness of identity. You have known the softness of fulfilled assumption. And from here, what comes is simply what belongs. You allow joy to lead you, not the joy of outcomes, but the joy of alignment, of knowing you are no longer split between desire and fulfillment.
You are whole, you are one, and life responding to this unity begins to move in perfect rhythm. Even your inner conversations begin to change. You no longer speak as the one asking, you speak as the one being. You carry on dialogues of peace, of abundance, of completion, and the outer world listens. It always listens, for it cannot help but mirror the inner word sustained in silence. And now you are no longer interested in signs. You have become a living sign. Your presence, your peace, your stillness, these are the signals to the world that something sacred has been assumed, and therefore something sacred must be made seen. But the journey does not end in fulfillment. The path continues inward, for even now something stirs beneath the final assumption. A light not of becoming, but of pure being. A whisper not of what you want, but of what you've always been. That whisper, soft as the breath between dreams, asks not what you desire, but whether you remember the one who dreams through you. It does not beckon you toward another scene or higher goal. It draws you into stillness, into the holy hush, where even imagination bows to presence, where there is nothing left to become, because the I am is enough. And here, in this inner sanctuary, you begin to sense the sacred secret, that all manifestation, all law, all assumption, was always a path back to the self that needs nothing to be whole, the self that lives not by waiting or proving or adjusting, but by simply being, the word made flesh, the awareness made form. You are not an idea trying to prove itself in the world. You are the infinite made visible through the lens of a state. You are not a seeker of signs. You are the silence that births them. And when you choose to abide in that silence, not visit, not sample, but abide, everything begins to feel strangely familiar, not because it has happened before, but because it has always been true. This is the mystery of creation, not that you can bring something into existence, but that you have the power to clothe the eternal in scenes, and yet the eternal does not change. It is the same yesterday, today, and forever. You are not creating reality. You are unfolding what already is. You are peeling back the illusion of distance between the seed and the bloom, and as you dwell in that revelation, even your desires begin to soften, not in intensity but in texture. They become less about fixing, more about expressing, less about escaping what is, more about embodying what has always been. You no longer seek desires to complete you. You receive them as invitations to remember more of what you are. And what are you? You are the inner word that never wavers. You are the eternal yes, whispered in the womb of creation. You are the one who speaks light into being, not with effort, but with awareness, not with force, but with faith. Faith not as effort, but as identity. Not belief in something to come, but being the one for whom it is already true. That is the essence of assumption. You do not hold an image until it appears. You become the one who already holds it as real. And then the world, faithful servant that it is, complies, not to your command, but to your embodiment. And in that embodiment, all seeking falls away. You no longer measure time by outcomes. You measure only by depth of dwelling. Has your mind returned to the end? Has your heart remembered the feeling of fulfillment? Has your soul exhaled into the assurance that this is already done? When you can say yes gently, quietly, with no need to announce it, the outer world begins to mirror your inner Sabbath. The waiting ends, not because the scene arrives, but because you have. And just as that peace begins to root deeper in your belly, you feel something even more profound awakening, a question not of what more you can manifest, but of how fully you can surrender to what never changes, to the formless presence behind all desire, the flame that flickers not with want, but with being, the flame that flickers not with want, but with being. That is where the true power lies, not in the hunger of desire, but in the quiet majesty of knowing. When the mind ceases its restless turning, and the heart no longer strains toward a future scene, the sacred light reveals itself, not as something found, but as what has always been illuminating you from within. It is in this holy pause where the deepest remembrance begins, not of something to be gained, but of something that was never lost. You do not ascend to meet it. It rises gently from within your stillness, a presence so intimate it cannot be spoken, only felt, a warmth that carries no image, yet colors every scene. And as you allow this presence to fill the canvas of your being, something ancient and eternal stirs. You feel the difference between assumption and effort. One flows with grace, the other strains. One is born of identity, the other of doubt. The moment you return to assumption as your resting place, not your strategy but your sacred home, the world no longer stands in resistance. It melts. You assume not to get, but because you have remembered who you are. You do not imagine as a tool. You imagine because it is your divine nature to give life to what you dwell upon. You are not looking to change matter. You are letting your inner movement be the cause of all that appears as matter. This is why signs become irrelevant, not because they are evil, but because they are secondary, a reflection, a ripple, a shadow of the original motion that began in you. And once you know yourself as the origin, you stop looking to the mirror to define the face. You bless the mirror, yes, but you look no longer for approval in its glass. You have turned fully inward, and the world has begun its quiet rearrangement. Even in the moments where nothing seems to shift on the surface, you feel the shift in you, and that is enough. You wake and walk in the state of completion. You breathe and rest in the knowing that your I am is the law, and it shall not return unto you void. You do not rush, you do not plead, you simply remain, for we walk by faith, not by sight. Faith not as blind effort, but as the seeing of the invisible, the conviction that the inner image, once fully assumed, must be made flesh, not by your might, but by the law of being. And that law is as faithful as breath, as still as sleep, as eternal as light. You now understand. To wait for signs is to worship the effect. To live in assumption is to rest in cause, and the one who lives in cause walks in a peace the world cannot replicate. You no longer need to manipulate the outer, because the outer is already obeying the inner tone. You are not persuading the universe. You are aligning with what is, and what is, always was. The state you dwell in was never created by time. It existed before the foundation of the world. You are merely remembering to live from it now, and just as this truth begins to deepen its roots within you, you feel the next invitation rise, not toward more control, but toward more surrender, not to create faster, but to trust more fully in what cannot be seen, yet holds all things together. What would unfold if you truly let go of watching the mirror, and began to live as the light behind it? To live as the light behind the mirror is to step beyond reflection altogether. You no longer wait to see it confirmed. You become the source from which all reflection flows. The moment you stop asking the mirror if you are who you say you are, you begin to embody the unshakable reality that knows itself, with or without witness. And yet how gentle this knowing is. It does not shout. It does not strive. It is not loud like the world. It is still, like breath before sound. It is soft like light before dawn. It is the whisper of I am, needing no evidence to exist. And from that whisper, all things are born. So when you feel the pull to seek validation, to chase another sign, pause and listen. Return to the hush within, where the seed has already been planted. Do not dig it up with doubt. Do not call the sun to hurry. Let your assumption root itself in silence, and the fruit will come. Not because you hunted it, but because you became the tree. You live now as one who gives, not gathers. You give form to the unseen by dwelling in its feeling. You give life to your chosen state, not because it proves your worth, but because it reveals it. You are no longer becoming worthy of the thing. You are revealing the worthiness that has always been your inheritance. And as you walk in this awareness, life becomes remarkably quiet, not empty, but clear, not dull, but free. You stop needing so much from the world, and the world begins to offer you more. You stop chasing alignment, and you begin to be the alignment, and everything begins to bend around your stillness, like wind through a field. You do not need to monitor how things unfold. You need only monitor your inner dwelling place. Are you living from the end? Are you resting in the feeling of the fulfilled state? Then all is well. And if you stray, if you forget, if you react, there is no condemnation. Simply return. Revision is mercy. Assumption is grace. The law is not a tool to be mastered, but a truth to be remembered. You are not here to control reality. You are here to realize it, and realization needs no proof. It blooms quietly in the soul, like spring after winter, without fanfare. It does not demand, it allows. It does not shout, it hums, and its hum is enough. Be still and know that I am God. Not do, not fix, not chase. Be still, know, feel the end and remain. And in that stillness, mountains move, though you lift no hand. Seas part, though you take no step. You do not command the world, you harmonize with it through your state. And what is your state but the invisible garment you wear at all times? What is your dwelling but the unseen throne from which your kingdom forms? You do not wear your desire as a hope. You wear it as your name. You live it. You breathe it. You do not ask the world to call you by that name. You call yourself by it, and the world must follow. And as this settles deeper into you, something even more subtle begins to stir. A silence not of absence, but of fullness. A presence so vast, it no longer needs form to be felt. A love so complete, it needs no object to shine. What happens when even your desires dissolve, and only this holy stillness remains? When even your desires dissolve, and only the holy stillness remains, you have returned home, not to a place, but to your original nature. Here, without striving, without searching, without waiting, you are whole. Not because the outer has given you its blessing, but because the inner has ceased to ask. You are no longer the one seeking signs. You are the sign itself. You are no longer watching for the world to shift. You are the invisible shift that precedes all visible change. This is not a metaphor. This is law. You are the operant power, not someday, not when results appear, but now and always now. And from this quiet center, life unfolds as a mirror of your state, not as a test of your worth. The world does not determine your power. It reflects it. And when you no longer waver inwardly, it no longer hesitates outwardly. But even this is secondary, for the true miracle is not that the world changes, it's that you no longer need it to. You are full, you are resting, you are clothed in the end, and that is enough. So you walk, not to arrive but to reveal. You speak not to convince but to declare. You imagine, not to force reality's hand, but because imagination is how God moves, how being unfolds into form. And you know now with a peace too deep for words, that what you assume in faith must outpicture itself, even if the whole world says otherwise. You do not argue with appearances, you bless them. You do not chase evidence, you trust causation. And what is that cause? The state, the inner movement, the feeling of the wish fulfilled. If you are faithful to that, silently, invisibly, immovably, then nothing shall be withheld. But even if the scene delays, you are not troubled. You do not beg the mirror to speed its reflection. You remain, you rest in your knowing, and the harvest comes in season, not because you earned it, but because you became it. And if ever you forget, you remember now that forgetting holds no shame. You revise, you return, you restate the truth. I am is the only cause. I am the beginning and the end. I am the one who assigns meaning. I am the one who makes all things new. You are no longer the servant of circumstances. You are the author of atmosphere. You do not wait for signs because you are the sign, the evidence of unseen power, the proof of the invisible made visible. You are the word become flesh not by effort but by assumption. And now that you know deeply and quietly who you are, you walk through life with a softness the world does not understand. You do not rush. You do not strain. You do not ask the waves to calm. You speak peace, be still, and they obey. Not because you control them, but because you no longer fear them. You know your kingdom is not of this world. You know your reality is not built by effort, but by identity. And identity is not something you chase. It is something you assume. It is something you rest in. It is something you remember. So sleep now if sleep calls you, or walk gently if stillness moves you. But wherever you go, go as the end fulfilled. Breathe as the wish already true. Rest as the dream already real. And let the world arrange itself around the rhythm of your inner Sabbath, for the truth has never changed. And now you know it in your bones. You are the operant power. You always have been.